My name is Chris Garcia. I'm from the CeQur HCP marketing team, and I'm excited to have you all join us for our webinar, which started as a local webinar, but once we invited Davida Kruger to be our esteemed host for tonight and speaker, it turned into a national webinar. So excited to say that we got folks from all over the country joining us tonight. So thank you all for joining us. So tonight's title of the presentation is Removing Known Barriers to Mealtime Insulin Dosing. Next slide, Davida, please. So here are the items we're going to cover tonight. We're going to start off with some introductions. We're first going to cover the unmet need in insulin delivery and some of the challenges associated to that. We're going to cover products, features, and benefits of CeQur Simplicity. And then after that, we'll cover some clinical data and user satisfaction, and then we'll tie that up with a summary. Next slide, please. And I'd like to take the opportunity now to introduce Davida Kruger. She is a certified nurse practitioner with more than 40 years of experience in both clinical research and practice. And she specializes in diabetes, of course, and has an emphasis on technology associated to diabetes. And she is joining us tonight from the Endocrinology, Diabetes, and Bone Disease Department at Henry Ford Health System in Detroit, Michigan. Next slide, Davida. So before I hand over the keys to Davida, I just want to cover some important disclosures. Today's program is sponsored by CeQur, and the speaker is presenting on behalf of our company, CeQur. Next slide. We're excited to announce the vision and mission of our company, and that is to simplify the lives of people with diabetes and to revolutionize insulin delivery by providing convenient, discreet, and injection-free dosing. Next slide. So now I'd like to officially hand over the keys to Davida Kruger, and she's going to start covering our first section, the unmet need in insulin delivery. And just one more quick note is we are going to have time for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to input them into the chat box, and we'll do our best to address those questions at the end of today's presentation. Davida, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chris. I'm so excited to be here. Well, first of all, this was started by my local rep, who I've known for a gazillion years, who said, would you do a small talk for some local people? And of course, I got very excited. And then when it became a national program, and I'm so thrilled that all of you across the country, because I know it's so hard to be able to give up the time to learn things, but the people here and all of you, I know, want to be on the cutting edge of what's important and good for people with diabetes. As Chris mentioned, that I have been in the world of diabetes for more than 40 years, and even I find it hard to believe. But what's exciting about that is that I have seen all kinds of medications, insulins, devices, pumps, devices like this come on the market that really do help our patients. And I was mentored by Fred Whitehouse, who worked until he was 90. I'm not doing that. But he worked until he was 90 seeing patients. And he said to me, Davida, if you're going to provide quality care to people with diabetes, you have to know every device inside out. You have to know how it works, and you have to know all of the medications, because that's the only way you're going to be effective for people with diabetes. And I'd also like to say that I am very proud and privileged that most of the research that I'm going to show you tonight, I've been an investigator with the company to bring that to the market. And to me, that's really exciting because I get to see it firsthand, work with it with my patients, and then I get to present it to you. And so tonight, I'm going to start by talking about the unmet needs in insulin delivery. So these are challenges that I think we all recognize, but we don't always have a resolve for. So we know insulin works. If you give insulin and it goes under the skin, we know that those blood sugars will come down, time and range will improve, the A1C will improve. One of the people in my clinic showed me someone who had an A1C of 13 or 14%, and we looked at time and range, and it was really, really, really high. And she goes, I've tried everything. I said, stop. The reason the A1C and the blood sugars are not coming down, the patient probably is not taking the insulin for a host of reasons. And that's, what do we do is partly is a detective work on trying to figure that out. So we know that there's 27 million people that have been diagnosed with diabetes in the United States. Now, 40 years ago, that number was about 7 or 8 million, and it keeps growing. 5 million people are on insulin. That doesn't mean that's all that should be on insulin, but that's what we've recorded is about 5 million on insulin. And greater than 90 years of clinical data will support the use of insulin, as we know. Insulin is still one of the most effective ways to lower the A1C, even with the emergences of many, many of other medications. And most of our patients are not at treatment goal. And about 80% of all people at some point in their career of diabetes will need insulin. So we know from the get-go, people with type 1 diabetes and then people who have type 2 diabetes at some point will need insulin. So 2.4 million people are on mealtime insulin. Intensification of insulin therapy with mealtime dosing is proven to be helpful with diabetes to help patients achieve treatment goal. And we've all negotiated that with our patients. Can I get you to take 1 injection at dinner? Can I now get you to take 1 injection at breakfast? I think you need it at lunch. Well, that's something that we can't get you to do. Okay, I'll take 1 or 2 injections a day. So the negotiation goes on. And again, these are the numbers. But when we think about the patients who struggle and have not achieved or maintained A1C goals, there's reasons behind it. We know insulin works. We now have so many choices of insulin. Again, when I started back in the dark age, all we had is mixed beef pork insulin, or we had pork, or we had beef. And now we have so many choices. We had, when Lente came to market and Ultra Lente, we were like, woo. So we have choices. We just need to give patients devices so that they can get those insulin in their lifestyle, into their workday, under the skin. So these are conversations we all tend to have with our patients. We ask the questions. In a given day, how many injections, or a given week, or a given month? And of course, it's not a threatening question. It really is a helpful question, just trying to feel out, why are we not at treatment goal? What can we do better? How can we help you better? And talk about how many injections are missed on a regular basis. So when patients respond and you ask them, there's a burden associated with injections. There's interference with the daily activities and embarrassment and injection pain. I mean, when you think about all the things people have to carry around, and you think about they don't always want others to know about their diabetes, there's a host of reasons. So when asked, 72% of patients say they're not going to take insulin outside of the home. They're just not going to do it. So they'll take their breakfast injection, they'll take their bedtime or dinner injections, but they're not going to take anything outside of the home. And for some people, midday or lunch is their first meal a day. Some people don't even eat breakfast. Then 57% report missing injections they knew they should take. And that isn't, it's not pejorative. It's, I knew I should have taken that lunchtime injection. I knew I was going out to dinner, but I left everything at home, or I just didn't want to do it. And there, again, different reasons. 53% just forget. I have patients say that to me all the time. You know what? I didn't know where I left the syringe. I didn't have time to do it. I was cooking dinner. I didn't know where the pen was. I didn't even think to measure my blood sugar. I just sat down and ate dinner. I just forgot to dose. And halfway through dinner, I said, let me go find all my equipment. 40% just forgot to bring their insulin. And 33% just decided they were going to skip it. It could be that in the middle of the workday, they're in a business meeting and they weren't going to take their insulin in the middle of a business meeting, or they were out to lunch with friends, or they were out shopping, or they were out doing 1,000 other things. And they made an informed decision to skip the insulin because of the burden of taking it. So here's how that equates, though. People spend about 12 hours of every day in a postprandial state. So we have the sleeping blood sugars that may be good if the dinner insulin was taken on time and the dinner insulin covered everything, and if they were snacking, covering the snacking, or whatever else was going on. But if we think about all day long, there's 12 hours of every day in a postprandial state, which means if patients do not take their mealtime insulin, they're hyperglycemic in that state. So 4 missed mealtime injections, excuse me. Excuse me. I promise you it's just a cold. I know that my 3-year-old granddaughter was sneezing all over me on Sunday and I caught her cold. And I know because I've tested. Welcome to 2022. So 4 missed mealtime doses equals an increase of almost a 1% A1C. So when you think about that, really getting that insulin under the skin is really important. And I figure if a patient tells me in a month's time they've missed 2 injections, it's probably more than 2 injections. Okay, so let's move on to talking a little bit about CeQur Simplicity. And I do have the privilege of saying that I did help bring this to market. So I'm very excited for my patients and for yours. So the CeQur Simplicity on-demand insulin delivery system is intended for subcutaneous bolus delivery of insulin for the management of diabetes mellitus in adult persons requiring insulin. It's used for individuals for 21 years and above, both type 1 and type 2, and is not intended for use in pediatrics, and it's labeled for use with Humalog and Novolog, and the insulin sold separately. That is the study, that's the insulins we used in the research studies we did. So I hope you've all had, I understand that there's a lot of CeQur staff out there in the community tonight. So I hope you've had an opportunity to actually see this, touch it, feel it, play with it, and see how small it is. If not, make sure that you do have that opportunity. So there's a critical need for insulin regimens that are less burdensome for the patient. So we want just convenience, we want discretion, we want insulin injection-free dosing. And the CeQur Simplicity does fit that bill. It fits into the lives of people requiring mealtime insulin dosing. It's wearable. And I love this. We're saying you can shower in it, sleep in it, exercise and swim in it. I always love when I put a device on somebody for 3 days, 7 days, 10 days, and they look at me very seriously and they say, is it okay to shower? Oh, please shower, please. But yes, this is, we can wearable for showering, sleeping, exercise, and swimming. And it's designed for ease of use. It's very discreet. It's very flat. Actually, the width is about 4/4. Pile them up so you can see what that looks like. It's designed to be worn under the clothing. And I'll show you in a little bit how you squeeze the dosing. So you just kind of squeeze through the clothing. You don't have to see it. You can just feel it. And so it does decrease the embarrassment for those individuals who just want to be discreet about their insulin. And when you think about the fact that this can be worn for 3 days, and on an average, the patient's going to take 3 mealtime injections, that's 9 injections over 3 days, or 90 fewer injections per month. Less discomfort or pain, and 90% of the users reported mealtime insulin painless with CeQur Simplicity because they put it on, and it sits in place. Okay, so 9 out of 10 users claimed CeQur Simplicity helped them to do a better job following insulin regimen than insulin syringes or pen, namely because it's right sitting there and they can easily access it. And I'll show you some of those research studies that support that. So here's what it looks like. Again, obviously this is a little bit bigger than the one that someone's going to wear, but it's convenient, discreet, insulin-free dosing, and it delivers insulin in 2-unit increments. If you can see the little cannulas, the bolus patch, and then the 2 buttons on either side, the long buttons on either side, those are how you squeeze those buttons to accurately deliver the 2 units. So after it's placed on the patient, if they're wearing it, all they have to do is squeeze the 2 together, and they do have to squeeze both so they can't inadvertently take an injection. But they squeeze those 2 together, they get 2 units of insulin, and they squeeze it again for 2 more units. Small, flexible cannula. It's designed for comfort. The bottom is rounded for comfort against the skin, water resistant, and it holds up to 200 units. The least you can put in it is 100 units for fill, but the maximum you're going to put in it is 200 units. It's only designed for bolus, so your mealtime insulin. If you look at the gentleman on the right side of the slide and look at his hand, you can see that he is squeezing the buttons on the CeQur Simplicity. Okay, so here also talks about the burden, and this is pretty clear. If a patient's on syringes or pens and they take 9 injections over 3 days, they're taking over 1,000 per year. If they're using CeQur, they're going to have 1 insertion every 3 days, or 122 insertions over the year. And again, you can see this person on the bottom squeezing the buttons. Okay, so let's do a little bit of comparison. These are unique FDA classifications or products codes that are utilized to obtain. It's a first in class for this device, and the product code is OPP. It's not a CSI insulin pump, but bolus only insulin patch, which is kind of cool that they've been able to get its own classification. So let's look on the left side of this slide, and that's subcutaneous insulin delivery, disposable syringes, disposable pens, or durable pens. And you can see the product code underneath that for disposable syringes, insulin versus device, and then FMN for durable pens. And the complement, you still have to take long-acting insulin, simple low-cost transitions, and then 3-day wearable, it is not. Discrete dosing, it is not. Injection-free delivery, it is not. It does have the capacity for patients with type 2 diabetes. So obviously syringes come in and pens can dose whatever dosing needs to be for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. On the right side of this slide, you have the disposable CSI Vigo patch and the semi-disposable CSI Omnipod. And it does, both of those have the same, believe it or not, the same FDA product code, which is helpful and not helpful when you're trying to get one of them. It can be used for, it cannot be used for transition from MDI to CSI directly. It has a rigid basal dosing, as you might remember, 20 units, 30 units, or 40 units, which equates to about 0.85, 1.25, and 1.7. And they're not flexible, so that if you put a patient on a Vigo, that is the basal rate they're going to get per hour. So 40 units, which many of our patients take, or 30 units of patients take, they get the same dosing per hour. And then also the Omnipod does not have necessarily a transition from MDI to CSI. It's worn, Vigo up to 1 day, the Omnipod for 3 days. Both of these can be worn under clothing. And then there is no needle with a disposable CSI afterwards. And I mean, it does have a needle, and then flexible cannula for the Omnipod. And the capacity for type 2 diabetes for both of these are limited. The Omnipod to a maximum of 200 for the total of basal and bolus, and the disposable Vigo up to a maximum of 76 units for both basal and bolus. So now let's look at how that compares to Simplicity. And it's individualized and flexible basal dosing, has simple low-cost transition, worn for up to 3 days, a discrete squeeze through the patient's clothing. It has a flexible cannula, and it does have a capacity for patients who have type 2 diabetes because they're getting their basal insulin and they're going to get bolus through the CeQur Simplicity. And once it's titrated, once you put it on, you have titrated so that you do lose 20 units. So there's 180 units, but that's still more than enough insulin over the 3 days. Okay, so a little bit on clinical data and user satisfaction. Now, originally this slide deck had every research study known to man, and we were able to cull it down to just a few. And the first are the functional testing. And the conclusions from those studies is that the patch is safe, accurate, and reliable for mealtime insulin delivery. And then the user experience studies, which 2 of those were done, conclusions were user rated higher satisfaction with more frequent dosing than pen or syringe. And then the ones that I'm going to review for you tonight are the randomized controlled trials. And their conclusions were that clinically proven to reduce A1C and to increase time in range and also patient satisfaction. Okay, so here is the randomized controlled trial. And what we did in this study is that it was a multi-center randomized study, 1-to-1, pen versus patch, with an N of 275 patients. And it was a crossover study, so everybody did get to at least try the patch at the time of the study. So 44 weeks either randomized to pen or 44 weeks randomized to patch. And then they crossed over, and 4 weeks, the patients got to try the opposite of what they were randomized to. This was a type 2 study. Patients had basal insulin only for at least 6 months, A1C 7.5 to 11%. They had to be between 22 years and 75 years. And there was a pattern-based logbook with simple insulin adjustments. Now, on the right-hand side shows you the number of visits, and the visits were the same in both treatment groups. And there were a fair number of visits and phone calls between the two treatment groups. And you can see that some in blue were phone calls. The rest we actually did face-to-face visits with both of the treatment groups. And this shows you the characteristics. I'll never understand how when we randomize patients, how they look the same in both treatment groups, but they essentially do. About 58% female and 58 female, 81 male in the CeQur group, and 52 versus 87 in the Pen group. And you can see that there is some multicultural race and ethnicity amongst the people included in the group, and the duration of diabetes about 14 to 15 years. A1C at screening mean was about 8.6. So the real-time outcome study results from clinical outcomes. A total of 63% of the users achieved an A1C of less than or equal to 7% at week 24. A total of 85% of the users achieved an A1C of less than or equal to 8% at the 24 weeks. So the study was 44 weeks. They were achieving these goals at 24 weeks. And you can see that A1C decrease of about 1.7% at the 24-week mark. And what was excellent was that these results were sustained at the end of the study as well. So you can see that the navy blue is baseline, the light blue is at 24 weeks, and at 44 weeks, the A1C lowering was sustained. And then there was no difference was observed for reported hypoglycemia events between the two treatment groups. The reduction in A1C was evidenced as early as 4 weeks, and near full A1C reductions were achieved by 12 weeks. This is non-inferior endpoint was met at 24 weeks, and change from baseline was 1.63% for both treatment groups at the 44 week. So this shows you clinical outcomes in terms of the improvement in time and range. So when we look at 70 to 180, the improvement in time and range went from 48% as much as 74% for the CeQur Simplicity, and then for the Pen 42% to 75%. And then you can see that we also had a lowering of A1Cs as well as the standard deviation. So there was a marked change in both time and range, which is important in the way we think about diabetes, as well as supported by the lowering of the A1C. Okay, on the left-hand side is a baseline of 48.4% of time and range. On the right-hand side, you can see the time and range at 74.1%. And that's a time and range increase of 50%. In terms of adverse events, there really wasn't difference between the two treatment groups. There was not a difference in terms of any of the adverse events or anything leading to discontinuation. You will notice that there was 1 death in the CeQur group, and there was 2 deaths in the Pen group, and that had nothing to do with devices or hypoglycemia. It had to do with cardiovascular issues that occurred during the treatment groups. Okay, so this is a clinical outcome study delivered higher user and provider satisfaction. The subjects using CeQur Simplicity reported a higher overall satisfaction, ease of use, and 88% of the users said CeQur Simplicity helped them to do a better job following their insulin regimen. So their A1Cs get to treatment goal, as well as that they like the use of the device. And healthcare providers claim that they prefer the product to Pen to advance people with type 2 diabetes from basal to basal bolus, and they too were satisfied with the CeQur Simplicity and found training subjects to use the product pretty easy. On the right-hand side, you have the subjects' reported outcomes compared to pen, satisfaction, preference, and would highly recommend the device. And this is the results from the real-world experience. Orange is prior to Simplicity. The blue is with the Simplicity. And there, just so it's not a little, it can be a little confusing. Insulin delivery satisfaction, a higher number with Simplicity is appropriate. That's what we're looking for. Interference with activity, a lower number is better with Simplicity. Clinical outcomes, higher again is better, 4.16 versus 2.72. Diabetes related, lower, 1.99. And psychological benefit, higher is better. And so in all these aspects, 95% of the patients were completely or very satisfied with Simplicity compared to 35% with their prior method. And 93% of patients say Simplicity is better than the previous method they used and like using it. Okay, so let me do a summary and then we'll have time for questions. So this is products and how to prescribe. Now I'm going to show you on this slide, but I also know that after this presentation, we do know where all of you hail from, and someone's going to send you a message with insurances in your own area, pharmacies in your own area, things that will help you prescribe, because this is different than how we're prescribing in Detroit. And I will tell you that as I get to this product slide, I want to talk a little bit about some of our patients that we've been pretty excited about the patients, and the access has been very good for some of our patients. And so I had a patient who was on basal insulin, and she could get the one injection of basal insulin every day. She's 25 years old. She has type 1 diabetes, and she wasn't taking her boluses. You know, sometimes she was taking her boluses only 2 or 3 times a week. And so we were now looking at a double-digit A1C. And I asked her back in December, would she consider wearing something like this? Because pumps were out. She didn't want to pump. I did get her to wear a CGM, but I couldn't get her to wear anything more. And she agreed to go on the CeQur Simplicity, and we placed it right after the holidays. Her time in range drastically improved. I haven't seen an A1C yet. She's wearing the device. We were able to get coverage for the device, and she's really much happier. So we're thrilled that her numbers look better. We're waiting for her A1C because I think that that's going to be the turning point for her. But I couldn't get anything else on her. I was able to get this device on her. And part of it is that she just didn't want to be hooked up to anything else, and she wanted life to be discreet. And then the other patient I had that I can think of is a patient with type 2 diabetes. And these are just 2. You know, obviously I have more, you will have more that are being very successful, who again was thinking about going to an insulin pump. And I said, why don't you try this before you go to an insulin pump? She was thinking about perhaps an Omnipod. I asked her to try this, and it again was very successful. Her numbers look good. She was just tired of the extra injections every day, and this has made her life a little bit easier. So it's not only for the patient who might be out of control and needs a device, but the ease of use for patients who are doing well and just don't want to be taking a pen out every day or taking 3 injections or more every single day. So when you're ordering it, think about the starter kit. Patients do need to have, they do have starter kits if you've not seen them already, but 2 CeQur Simplicity, 2 unit devices, and then the quick starter guide and the dose counting card changes by stickers, and 1 Simplicity inserter come in the starter kit. And the patients, the starter kit can be, the inserter is reusable. Patient can just wash it with warm soapy water, and then use the prescription sheet that you're going to be getting to send in for the patient's devices. And it's in a 10-pack for 1 month. And I was able to get for both my patients a 3-month supply and 10 CeQur Simplicity 2-unit devices with a quick starter dose counting card, and change by stickers so they remember to change every 3 days. Although the device will lock one that doesn't have any insulin, so you don't have to worry about the patient getting a smaller dose or the patient not getting their dose. So again, here's some ways to order, but you'll all be getting some other ways. And it is covered under most commercials and Medicare Part D insurance plans as pharmacy benefit. Where it's covered, patients copay of $50 or less a month. One of my patients did not have a copay. One of my patients had the $50 a month. Okay, so to summarize, patients using mealtime insulin may not be at goal. Missing mealtime insulin doses can lead to good to poor glucose control. CeQur Simplicity can address barriers to mealtime insulin dosing. Use of CeQur Simplicity has been shown to reduce A1C and to improve time and range. Insulin adherence has been shown to reduce all-cause costs and preferred over insulin pens by patients and providers, and NIP-RX specialty pharmacy to help providers and patients, as well as others that will come your way that will be helpful to you. And also the people in your area can talk to you about the commercial insulins in your area, or I'm sorry, commercial insurances in your area. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. And Chris is going to join me back for the Q&A.
Thank you, Davida. That was a fantastic presentation. I'm excited to have seen it, especially since we did cut that down, like you said, substantially with the number of slides of our clinical data. But excited to kick off our Q&A now. And if you don't mind, Davida, why don't we go ahead and stop sharing your slides so that they can see.
Oh, absolutely.
Both our beautiful faces nice and big.
Get rid of that.
Okay, so one of my colleagues, Curtis Carter, is being so kind enough to address some of the questions that are coming in via the Q&A feature. But I do have some questions that are very common questions that we are receiving on social media, at other talks, et cetera, even in the field as well. And some of this information you previously have addressed in your talk, but it's also good to just reinforce. And a lot of times folks join in, trickle in during the presentation today, not since the beginning of the presentation, right? So they may have missed some things.
Wait, so, Chris, you think someone would be late to see me talk?
Oh gosh, shame on them, right? Shame on them. We actually had like 10 folks join in about 10 minutes early. Which
I'm just thrilled that everybody's joined, whatever time they came in. I'm just thrilled to see everybody.
So the first question is, can CeQur Simplicity, the patch, be refilled or reused?
No, absolutely not. As I mentioned very quickly, is that once the patch goes on with the insulin in it, and the patient will squeeze those buttons, when there's no more insulin, those buttons will lock and you can't refill it, you can't reapply it, you can't undo that. So it's a 3-day use and then toss.
Great. And well, one thing I can add to that too is if there's ever any issue with the cannula, it's a safety function where the buttons will lock. So that's kind of a nice added safety feature there as well.
Thank you, Chris. Right.
Another question is, does the product come preloaded with insulin?
No, it does not, but it comes with all the tools you need to load the insulin into the Simplicity. So that shouldn't be a problem.
And another question is, how much rapid acting insulin does CeQur Simplicity hold? I know you addressed.
Yeah, I did. I did it. I'm sorry. I'm so excited to answer your questions. So it's 200 units, but you need 20 units to prep the device. So at the end of the day, they get 180 units for the 3 days. However, if the patient is not going to use a full 3 days worth, they certainly can put less insulin in it, but it has to be a minimum of 100 units.
Thank you. And another question is related to the who we're indicated for, right? So who can use our patch?
You mean 21 and above? Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's approved for adults 21 years and above.
And that's and just to reconfirm too, that's both for type 1 and type 2.
Absolutely. I think it's really important that people understand that this device is for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And the two people I brought up, one had type 1, one had type 2 diabetes. And most of our patients can tolerate a 2-unit increment bolus. And that's where the rubber hits the road, is if you have a patient who's very, very, very sensitive to insulin and they can't take 2-unit increments, then this device might not be for them. But the majority of patients can, and it's for both type 1 and type 2.
Thank you, Davida. Another question that I see a lot come through is, can it be used for gestational diabetes?
It hasn't been tested in diabetes in pregnancy or gestational diabetes, but the device is designed for people who require insulin. On label, I would say to you, I don't know, but in my own clinic, we are going to use it for that.
And another very common question as well is for those folks that dose in odd units. So can patients use CeQur Simplicity if they dose in odd units, for example, in 1-unit increments?
No, you have to use 2-unit increments. And I saw something flash up for confirmation. It's a maximum 2-unit fill, 20 units to prime it. So you end up with 180 units for the 3 days max, but it's 2-unit increments. So you can't do odd doses.
Thank you, Davida. And another common question is related to training. So how do patients learn to use CeQur Simplicity? How much time is needed? I can address this one if you'd like, since
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, no, at CeQur, we have a great CeQur care team, like a customer support team, and they're available to train providers and provider staff as well on how to learn how to apply the product and use the product. And throughout that process, we've learned that the training can take anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. So it's actually, very, very, very easy to learn, and it's quick for folks to learn it. And also allows me the opportunity to say that we have great resources. So one of them being on our website, we have a quick start training video. So feel free to dig through to go to our website to locate that training video if you want to learn more about learning how to apply the product.
And let me just add that we have been offered all these resources, and to date, we've chosen to train on our own. I think that as our population of patients grow, we'll probably reach out to use some more of these. But we've been so excited because we wanted to see how the patient responded, but also because we realized that it didn't take that long and we didn't want to wait for the training. We wanted the patient to leave with the device on. So the ones I've been doing, we actually train. I'm fortunate enough to have some staff that can come in and join me. And we've been training, and we agree it doesn't take more than 15, maybe 20 minutes for the patient's training.
I'm curious, kind of more as some best practices. Like, do you have a certified diabetes trainer that helps with that, or is it maybe even a medical assistant? Like, how does that play out?
So right now I've been using a certified educator she actually did the clinical research with me, so she was really excited to see it come to fruition. And so she has been doing that. And we often ask the patient to either read the materials or go online and look at, or we might have them do that in the office. The one I mentioned, the patient who has type 1 diabetes, we did that remotely. And so we got the starter kit to her. We had the prescription filled for her. She had the vials of insulin, and we asked her to go online and look at what you guys supply in terms of learning. And then we got on a video visit with her, and she did it. And she did it in about 15 minutes after she took some time to learn more.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Another very common question we get is if it's covered by insurance, right? So I know you addressed that during your presentation, but that's another question that I'm comfortable to answer again to reinforce the data. But so on most commercial and Medicare Part D plans, it's covered as a pharmacy benefit. And where the product is covered, we're seeing that 2/3 of patients have a copay of $50 or less per month. And of course, individual plans are going to vary from patient to patient. But if you have any questions related to your specific area, feel free to contact us. I will, if one of my colleagues can put in the Secure Care email address and also the phone number into the chat box, that would be great. That's the best way to get a hold of us. But tomorrow or the next couple of days after today's presentation, we'll also follow up with some resources via email to make sure that you're well equipped to give us a call and to feel that you have all the resources available to learn more and to perhaps start some patients on our product. So
I also wanted to say that someone asked if we provide the first vial of insulin or the patient brings it to the clinic, and it really just depends. Like if we were having the patient come in, then we'd ask them to bring their insulin, but we're fortunate enough to have sampling, so often we will sample the patient for their first vial of insulin.
Thank you, Davida. And I do see Curtis there typing away at, so it's a team effort here. Another question, and maybe you just could maybe elaborate a little further, because I know you addressed this in your talk earlier, but in terms of normal daily activities, can you wear it? Is it waterproof? Can you wear it during daily activities?
So yes, let me see how, I can't remember how deep the patient can go. Is it, 3 feet, 3 inches for up to 30 minutes if the patient is doing swimming. But showering, swimming, sleeping, all that stuff is perfectly fine. But it's water resistant in a depth of 3 feet, 3 inches for up to 30 minutes. So please shower in between your visits if you're going to use this.
Oh, I can only imagine some of the fun stuff you experience at your practice.
So one of the other things is people keep asking about insulin. And so the research has been done on Novolog and Humalog. And so that's the way it's labeled. And really right now, that's all I'm going to say. What you do in clinical practice may be a little bit different, but that's how it's been approved.
And another common question we have is if the inserter is reusable. I think you mentioned earlier some.
Yes. Yeah, the research, it's definitely reusables. You don't want the patient to throw that away. Soapy water to clean it as needed.
And another question that I see has come in that maybe Curtis hasn't addressed is, can it be worn longer than the 3 days? Because I know we do have the indication for 3-day use. So
it's only indicated for three days. When it's out of insulin, it will lock. Do you want to say anything more?
I think that's the best way we can address that.
Yeah, it's designed to be worn for 3 days and for over a 3-day period.
And one question I do receive a lot when I'm at trade shows is, does CeQur Simplicity track insulin doses?
No, it doesn't track, not like a pen or a pump or anything like that. It does not track doses. It's really a standalone to give bolus insulin. And
I've had some great conversations at trade shows, is people are very happy about how just thin the device is.
Mm-hmm.
So, the fact that it doesn't track insulin doses, if we were to implement that technology, it would thicken the device. So I think it's just another opportunity to mention how happy folks are with how thin the device is. And what I like to say is a little ergonomic because it has the rounded edges.
The rounded edge for soft. Yeah, yep. No, it actually is pretty lightweight too. It's very lightweight. It's easy. Someone asked how easy. It's very easy to fill. And it's very easy to apply and comfortable. It really, truly is. And there are sample kits that you can get, starter kits that have some of these devices, as I mentioned before, two devices plus the inserter, and it'll give you a nice opportunity to see what it looks like. I meant to bring one. I'm so sorry I didn't bring one. The pictures are good too, but it's pretty easy to fill and insert, and it's small.
So I'm looking at more questions that have come in. Can the device only be placed on the lower stomach area, the abdomen? So
Don't know
I'm
the
happy to.
answer to that. Could you take that one? I don't know. I think it's
Sure.
abdomen.
So the product is only studied in the abdomen area, so that's why we do advertise it that way and are indicated that way. So you know, we just didn't test the device in other areas of the body. And since we do have time here, another question is, and I'm just trying to see which questions we haven't addressed yet. What if there is insulin left after 3 days? I mean, I know we've kind of addressed that. Can they continue to use it?
On label, they cannot.
Okay, just going through some more questions here to see what we have not addressed yet.
Someone asked, do you have a patient's wearing a Dexcom and a CeQur at the same time? The patient who has type 2 diabetes that I mentioned is wearing a Dexcom and a CeQur. So I knew her data was good. She was just frustrated having to take so many injections a day, and she was using pens. And we were starting to talk about, well, what else could we do? She wasn't ready for a pump. She's not sure she'll ever be ready for a pump, but she's tired of taking injections. So we made the transition to CeQur Simplicity for her so that her life would be a little bit easier. And she does wear a Dexcom.
And Davida, the cohort study for time and range that you covered, so yep. Those folks were a cohort of folks with CGM, right? So yep. And that's how we were able to have data on time and range. So so absolutely, you know, folks that are on CGM, it's a good way to track how well the insulin delivery is being done and to improve their glucose numbers, right?
So here's a question. The device only locks when the patient runs out of insulin, not at the end of 3 days. Yes, that is correct. So if you think about the Vigo, it locks at 24 hours, no matter what. This device locks when it runs out of insulin.
One question too that I think I saw and also comes up a lot is in terms of adhesion. So Davida, do you have any tips for how you coach your patients with adhesion, the adhesion of the patch?
Yeah, so one of the things, because it's so nice and light, it sticks very, very well. And we tend to use an underdressing anyway, like a skin tack on everything we do, just to make sure. The 2 patients I mentioned today are not using skin tack, and they're not having problems with adhesion. It stays on pretty well. I think probably because it's so lightweight, but it seems to stay on pretty well. So we haven't had to use skin tack for these patients yet, or overdressings.
And another common question too, I think I see a couple, is in regards to ultra rapid insulins. So I mean, I know how you would address that.
Did you want me to address that? No, I think that in clinical research, we only use Novolog and Humalog because that's what was available at the time we did the research. And somebody is correcting me, and she is absolutely right. Not true about the Vigo. The basal chamber is the one that locks and runs out. The bolus can still go after the 24 hours. Thank you.
Lots of questions here. It's a very, very engaged audience you have here, Davida.
I'm thrilled.
So I see a Medicare Part D question. I know one of my colleagues posted our Secure Care contact information. That's a great question where our customer care team could help address any insurance questions.
Any new questions? Do you see anything more? Oh, wait. Does CeQur plan on adding a tracking method for the amount of insulin in the patch? Do you want to take that?
So I know I did mention earlier that not having a tracking mechanism is what allows our device to be so sleek and thin. Currently, we don't have any plans for that, but as we continue to grow, we'll keep you all posted if we do, start any plans to create any tracking mechanisms in our device. The starter kit does have dose cards. I'm not sure if you've had any patients use those, Davida, that essentially it's a sticker where you put onto the device that is a reminder when your 3 days are up. So that's one of the ways currently that our patients are helping themselves to know when to replace the device after 3 days.
Most people probably put that in their cell phone as an alarm.
Chris and Davida, can I jump in? Because there's one that I think Davida can address.
Sure.
This is a great educator question. Is there a patient questionnaire you use before the patient starts asking what they want to achieve?
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I don't. But I love that idea. I mean, we ask the question, like, why are you here to, what brings you to the visit today? What are your goals, your short-term goals, your long-term goals? In the next 3 to 9 months, I verbally ask those questions, but I don't specifically use any questionnaires.
I have to thank you all. Really appreciate your engagement, and so many questions that it's a little difficult to see which ones we haven't answered, but I'm loving it. One that I think is really important is, and I have a lot of my colleagues helping as well, to keep track of your awesome questions, is Davida. So folks that use their insulin pen supply then transition to vials, can CeQur users use their insulin pen supply and then transition to vials? And then if so, how?
I'm not sure I understand that question, but let me try. So when a patient's on injections and we transition them to an insulin pump, we write the new prescription for vials. It would be the same thing here. And many of our pump patients, we give them also a prescription for syringes as backup in case the pump fails. So it shouldn't be an issue. Now, where I think it depends on the insurance company, I could see where if a patient just got a 3-month supply of pens, there may be some insurance companies that would say, oh, we can't give you vials, but I've not actually had that happen. As I think of as many patients as I've transitioned from syringes to pumps, I just usually write the prescription for the vial and they magically appear. So I've not had that problem at all.
I think that absolutely addresses the question.
If there's a question, are retail pharmacy informed of this device and carrying this device, or DME? It's definitely a pharmacy, 100% pharmacy, not DME at all. And again, you're going to get more information on which of the pharmacies and how to access the pharmacies.
Yeah, so I'll take that as an opportunity to readdress what I mentioned earlier. So the prescription instructions that we had in the presentation are specific to our specialty pharmacy, but I do know that a majority of those that joined today were invited by our territory managers, and in those areas you're using a local pharmacy. So what I'll do to make it easier for everybody is I'll have the attendee list, and within the next 2 days I will mail out, based on what state you're in, specific instructions related to how that territory manager in your area is supporting you in terms of prescriptions. So hang in tight, and I'll send you those specific instructions per your area.
I also wanted to say that if you're using electronic like Epic, it's in Epic, and it's CeQur Simplicity 2-dose is how you find it in Epic. It took me a little while, but we found it in Epic. So it's definitely in there.
Now you're providing cliff notes to what I'm going to send them via email, Davida.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, that's great to mention. Thank you so much. And again, I gotta thank you all for this engagement and looking through more of the questions.
Oh, here's one thing. I assume there's a need for dose reduction for insulin doses, similar to transition syringe to pump. That's a really good question. So in the patient I described that was taking her insulin, I could see her time in range. She was doing well, and I knew she was taking her insulin. So I did not decrease her insulin because I knew that she was doing fine. So I didn't need, like on an insulin pump, when you get the basal bolus, you do decrease it about 25%. Now, for someone who I've increased their insulin because it didn't dawn on me that maybe they weren't taking all of it, and now they're on larger doses than I would have expected, that individual, when they start taking their insulin, might have low blood sugar if I don't lower that insulin. So for the patient who had type 1 diabetes, who I was concerned that she was now going to take the insulin, I did lower her about 25% because there's no rush to the finish line. I can always give her back the insulin once she starts taking it with the CeQur Simplicity. That's a great question. One more question. Do you have to write a separate prescription for the inserter? If you don't have a starter kit, which has the inserter in it that you can give the patient, yes, you do have to write a separate prescription for the inserter.
I think another question we haven't addressed is, can you fill from an insulin pen?
Ooh, I would say not. Yeah, I would say not. Use the device it comes with. I think where that comes from, and I've seen people do it on insulin pumps, it always makes me a little bit nervous, is because of the fact that a patient may have a supply of pens sitting in the refrigerator, and what do I do with all the insulin? I would be a little nervous about that. That doesn't mean someone's not going to do it, but I would be a little bit nervous about it.
Davida, you have the majority of your esteemed attendees here waiting till the last second to ask more questions.
Someone's asking about samples, and the people that are in your area will talk to you about samples and starter kits.
Yeah, so I'm actually really excited that a lot of the folks that joined are in the areas where we have our territory managers. So rest assured that they will get a hold of you and follow up with each of you, and hopefully be able to provide samples as best as possible.
And Chris, you'll appreciate this one. My friend Jennifer said that she's already making a list in her head of patients that she wants to try this on. Yes, that's why you're here. Thank you so much.
That's exciting to hear. Thank you so much.
Yeah, very exciting.
So I know we're getting to the top of the full hour here for the presentation. So I'll go ahead and start saying my goodbyes and thank yous. So again, Davida, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
I honestly, I've never seen this much engagement ever. And I've run a lot of these type of programs for many years. So it must have been that headshot of yours.
It must have been that headshot. Yeah, that has to be it.
So thank you very much, and just want to reinforce again that all of you will receive an email with specific prescribing instructions. So hang in tight for that. And I want to thank you all for attending. And again, Davida, thank you very much. And I want to wish you all a nice evening. And we'll talk to you soon, hopefully.
Thank you, Chris.